Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
There is a war. It's happening now. It will decide the fate of humanity. The time to choose sides has come. We are the resistance. We are the Infowar.
Welcome to the Infowars Nightly News. I'm David Knight. It's Thursday, October 9th, 2014, and here are our top stories.
Tonight, the executive order to detain sick Americans. Then, cops who burned a baby won't face indictments. And why Democrats are bailing on Harry Reid. That's next on the Infowars Nightly News.
The globalists are intelligent, they're smart, but they're also very arrogant and super hyper hubris filled, overconfident with bravado, arrogance, whatever you want to call it.
Well, sadly, yesterday, the first case of Ebola in the United States came to a close with the death of Mr. Duncan. But a lot of us believe that this is not the end of it. And of course, one of those people is the Director of Health and Human Services, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Sylvia Burwell. She said that despite the best efforts of health officials, Americans have to prepare for the reality that there may be more cases of Ebola in the U.S. We had one case, she said, and I think there may be other cases. And I think we have to recognize that as a nation. Now, she went on to say that the most important place with regard to taking care of screening is actually at the point of departure. Well, that didn't work out very well for us, did it? If they're not going to shut down flights, if they're going to instead shut down the precautions that were put in place, recommended by the CDC, and that was quietly taken away by Obama in 2010, if they're not going to track flyers and keep a history of that because supposedly that violates our privacy, since when has the federal government ever cared about violating our privacy? When it serves their purposes, and it serves their purposes in every respect except this, they will keep track of records, keep track of who's flying where. And certainly in this situation, out of people who are flying out of certain countries, they should keep those records. But the one thing that they look for, and this is what you see Health and Human Services and the federal government, they see this all through the lens of open borders. Now, of course, Jesse Jackson went to the area and he has a different filter. He sees everything in terms of racism. The story from Infowars.com, Jesse Jackson says the Dallas patient's Ebola death was due to racism. He said, what role did his lack of privilege play in the treatment he received? Really? Well, as one person put it, and we quoted this in the article, one Dallas resident said, how is this a race issue? The man lied. He's a health risk. And they point out that he went through 4 different airports. He brought it to Dallas County. He brought this to the United States, to a new continent, based on the fact that he lied about this, that he covered it up. And of course, the government, with its preoccupation with open borders, and Jesse Jackson, with his preoccupation with racism, are missing the key points. And the key point is that there's incompetence here, there's a level of idiocracy, and there are different agendas that are helping this to spread. Now, to her credit, his stepdaughter, Mrs. Jala, was given the all clear by the CDC, amazingly, only 7 days after she was in close, intimate contact with him as a caregiver. And we know that the minimum time is 8 to 10 days. They told her she could return to her job as a nurse, even though symptoms could manifest themselves up to 21 days later. And according to their current prognosis, people can only catch it when others are symptomatic. There's a lot of question that many people have raised that that's not the case, that people can express the virus, especially as an aerosol, before they are showing symptoms. But it's not just in America where there were cases of incompetence. And of course, he was given an experimental drug. He was given a lot of care. The hospital bill in Dallas goes up to $1,000 an hour, estimated Bloomberg. They say that the care that was provided to him will cost as much as $500,000, and they're going to have to recognize that there is no money. They will just have to write this off. Yes, he came to this country, he lied to get in, he brought the disease in, and then he had no insurance, no way, no intention to pay for it, yet care was provided for him. even given experimental drugs. But that's not good enough for Jesse Jackson. He wants to chalk it up to something else. Well, there's a healthy dose of incompetence as well, and we can see this on an even greater scale in Spain, where we see the first transmission outside of Africa of Ebola. The hospital worker there, the nurse who has been set aside as testing positive for Ebola, we learned that she was exposing other people in the emergency room for 8 hours after she tested positive for Ebola. Now, the Liberian man went to the hospital and was turned away once. This nurse in Spain was turned back 3 times. She went for medical care 3 times, and they sent her away before the 3rd time, realizing that she, in fact, did have Ebola. And then that took 1 week after she first went to see a doctor. His health care was delayed by incompetence for 2 days. But then it gets worse. After they know that she has Ebola, this is what happens. This is from a story from CNN. They say, according to a worker at the hospital, Romero lay in the emergency room exposed to other patients as well as to medical staff who were going back and forth for 8 hours before being transferred to a hospital in the Spanish capital that specializes in infectious diseases. Yes, the incompetence that is spreading this, the lack of care, the lack of taking this seriously is even more so on parade in Spain. Right after the break, we're going to take a look at what's happening politically in Liberia. There are some parallels as what many of us believe may happen in America if this gets out of hand. Stay with us.
DNA Force. When cells become toxic, they die early and aging sets in. DNA Force. No one has put together a formula that focuses directly on brain health, nerve growth factors, and optimizing your cellular energy at the same time. Just one of the key compounds, BioPQQ, is backed by major clinical studies. DNA Force. We now have the synergistic solution. Secure your DNA Force today at InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. DNA Force.